Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, founder and CEO at Riderflex. We hope you enjoy today's podcast. And as a reminder, please subscribe to the Riderflex show for updates on new episodes. And by the way, if you haven't already, check out the book we recently launched, The Riderflex Guide, Inspiring and Hiring, available for purchase on Amazon. And now, a quick word from our sponsor.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing360. Fuel your brand.
Do you go by JB or John? Because I noticed the JB's on your LinkedIn profile, so I didn't know. What do you prefer?
Well, nickname is JB, John or JB, either one. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Or how about just sir?
No, that's right. Yeah, if you call me General, I make you do push-ups.
Now, was the mustache after the military, or could you grow that as a general? What are the rules there? I don't even know.
Yeah, no, I had a mustache when I was a captain. I think later on in ranks, I didn't have it, but when I retired, figured it was time to grow it back again. There's an old, General Robin Olds. You ever heard of him?
No, I'm sorry. No.
World War II and Vietnam. He was a bit of a character. We always had this big bushy mustache. And so in March, all of the these are the Air Force Academy and a lot of the fighter squadrons, everybody grows a mustache.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Yeah. All right. Very good. What'd you think of that second Top Gun movie? Is that just all fiction, or is any of that even close to what goes on? And what are the thoughts there?
Well, the photography in 1986, when the first one came out, was pretty good. But this one, the photography was amazing, when you think about it, because the technology improved so much. But there's still a bunch of quirky things. I always get the kick out of when when Tom Cruise, the pilots, they just rack that stick back, to make the climb last minute. You probably would over-G the airplane and rip the wings off, if you did it.
Oh, really? Okay.
You have to bring it in. You can't just, yak it back. So, but other than that, it was a fun movie to watch. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I know guys like you probably dissecting you're looking at it thinking, okay, that's not right. That's not right.
We pulled, they made a big deal about pulling 9Gs. We pull 9Gs in the F-16 all the time. So,
oh, really? Okay.
So.
All right. All right. Well, tell me a little bit, John, about your family and early childhood stuff, mom and dad, before we get into the service and everything, with Wings Over the Rockies. I want to know a little bit about some history, if you don't mind. Can you share? Yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in the Bronx in New York City in a one-bedroom apartment. So, as you can imagine, growing up in the Bronx has got its challenges, but it also has its great rewards, It was a neighborhood I grew in was a good one, but I graduated from Cardinal Spellman High School with the Catholic school, so I went to Catholic school from grammar school all the way through high school.
Okay.
And then when I finished high school there, I found out about the Air Force Academy and put my application in to be hopefully selected, and I was in 1969, and so I went to the Academy from 69 to 73.
Why? What was the attraction to the Air Force? Why specifically the Academy? How'd that even come about?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. I was dating a girl in high school who had two older brothers, and both of them went to the Air Force Academy. That's how I found out about it. I didn't even know it existed. In fact, I wasn't even really sure where Colorado was, to be honest with you. So it was one of those things where I started saying flying and living in Colorado. That sounds like a pretty good opportunity. So yeah, it kind of got the bug about. I remember a friend of mine who lived next door in the apartment complex. He didn't have any children, but took a bunch of kids from the neighborhood to an airfield that was abandoned in Long Island, and never been on an airfield, never touched an airplane, never talked to a pilot until that day. And go figure. Here we are.
How about that? What'd your folks do?
My mother was a secretary, and my father was a cop in New York. The typical Irish cop.
Wow. So, wow. I bet he had some stories.
He has some stories. He was a bit of a character.
Let's see. He was born, let me guess, he was probably born when? 20s? 19s?
1921. My mother was born in 1920, yeah. And they were all from New York, both of them. Born and bred.
Is that right? And were their parents the first Irish over? Like, what's the timeline there? I'm just curious.
Well, my mother's side, my grandmother, maternal grandmother, was born in Ireland. My
Okay.
father was about second generation Irish, but I did one of those ancestry.com things, and I'm 94% Irish. So what did I do? I married an Irish girl, and she's her mother was born in Ireland. Her mother happens to be Mary. My mother's name was Mary, so not much originality there. But I remember when I got my 94%. I think they only go to 95. They don't go any higher than that.
Oh,
So
okay.
we got her tested, and she got 95, of course. And she told me, dearie, he says, the 1% makes all the difference in the world.
That's pretty good. Have you been over? Have you been to
Oh,
Ireland
yeah.
several
No,
times?
I've probably been to Ireland maybe half a dozen times. Yeah.
That's good. That's cool. So yeah, I was wondering. I didn't know if your dad maybe served or something. Sounds like he served in law enforcement, but I didn't know if there was any military history
Now, he
there.
was in the Army. He was an artillery spotter for the Army and rose to tech sergeant. Did his typical thing. He left when he arrived in Hawaii 2 days after Pearl Harbor, and
Wow.
he was just on his way there anyway. And then he didn't come back for the full 5 years. He was gone from 1940 till 1945.
Wow. So that plus being a cop in New York, I'm guessing he wasn't a soft guy.
Well, he was kind of a typical Irish, father. Didn't put up with too much, but in
Siblings?
those days they're all drinkers and they're all smokers, and
Oh yeah.
and so it was
Yeah.
different generation.
Different generation. Do you have siblings?
One sister, yeah,
One
she's
sister.
younger than I am, yeah, a couple of years.
Okay. So to get into, the academy, pretty tough, or what was it? I mean, you must have been straight A student. You must have had like a letter from a senator. You must have been a good student, good kid.
Well, yes and no. I was a bit rambunctious when I was in my early years in high school, but it was one of those things where you have to get a congressional nomination. I was lucky enough to get one of those. My grades were pretty good, and I played sports and had leadership in the student council, and those kinds of things are all things when I advise young people. You can demonstrate, good academics, good social skills, good leadership skills. Sports always helps. So I was a swimmer and ran track, and that seemed to be a help to get into the academy. But yeah,
Okay.
nowadays I look at some of these applications. I don't think I can compete with the kids that go in there try to compete now. I wouldn't get in, but I was lucky
Did
enough to get
you
in.
did you go in thinking I want to be a pilot and fly planes, or I want to be an officer and a general someday, or both? Did you have certain aspirations?
Well, I tell you, I was extremely naive. I didn't even know what I was getting into. So when I got off the bus at the Air Force Academy, it was one of those things where it was 1969, so it was a kinder, gentler, and they, oh, welcome to the Air Force Academy, huh? And I said, well, that's not bad. And then we're there for a couple of days. They shaved our heads and gave us uniform, marched us around a little bit, but everybody was pretty nice. So I wrote back to my mother. I said, I think I'm going to like it here. It's a pretty friendly group. Well, that day is when the training started. You get upperclassmen in your face screaming at you, and I go, what the heck? So I knew I was going to go through basic training, but I had no idea what it was like. I had nobody really to talk to, and I never did talk to those brothers that I dated my girlfriends. So so it was all new to me, and I had no idea. But once I got the bug about flying, it was just that's what I want to do, and knew right from the beginning. And you get a kick out of this, but as a cadet, you can be flying gliders, and then I became a soaring instructor, a glider instructor as a cadet, where you can teach other cadets.
Okay.
There was only 12 of us in my class that were in that category, but it wasn't me that I talk about when I tell that story. It was one of my classmates, and that was Sully Sullenberger, the guy who landed in the Hudson.
Really? How about that?
So he landed a glider in the Hudson. Go figure.
Do you still have contact with him?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. We've got our 50th reunion coming up here in September.
When you see him now, you're like, okay, man. So you're famous. They made a movie. You guys give him hell?
Oh yeah. Well, we've seen each other over the years. In fact, we honored him at the Wings Over the Rockies in 2019. I got him in. We honor one person or an organization every year for our gala, and he was the honoree that year, and we had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So your career kind of takes off. You start slowly getting promoted from one rank to another, et cetera. You must have done all the right things. You must not have gotten in trouble.
Well, I was a fighter pilot, so I flew F-4s to begin because that was the airplane at the time, and later on flew F-16s. And, I know people saw the movie Top Gun. Well, I went through the Air Force Top Gun, we call it Fighter Weapons School. Kind of funny story on that. I tell the Navy guys, well, your Top Gun was only 2 weeks long and ours was 6 months long. And you know what they say? Well, it only took us 2 weeks to learn when you took 6 months to learn. So, but actually, their course now is a lot longer too. But no, in the very beginning, it was a short course, very short course.
How about that? I didn't know that. Okay. And let's see, how long did it take to make Major General? Did you do that right before retirement, or how long were you in that position?
Well, let's see, I was in for 30 years. So I pinned on General. Let's see, it would have been in my 23rd year. And
Really?
Then I was Major General in my 27th year. And then I retired a little after 30 years. Yeah, my last duty was I was the board member and executive director for the Columbia Space Shuttle accident. This is the one we lost a teacher in space, right? So, Columbia is in 1986 was Challenger, and Columbia was in 2003. So I was actually in NASA in 1986 as a White House fellow when we lost the teacher in flight, and then I was selected when I made 2 stars with a few other people that were on the board. 4 of us were flag officers, and we had a former Secretary of the Air Force. We had a former Rhodes Scholar. A lot of interesting people who were part of that investigation team. But that was the last thing I did on active duty.
Did you want to be general? Did you want to make that, or were you just like, hey, I'm just going to kick ass, and if I get promoted, great. If I don't,
Yeah, my ambition at the beginning, once I became a fighter pilot, was to be a squadron commander of a fighter squadron. Okay. And I achieved that. So, after you do that, and if you do okay, they kind of look at you and say, well, maybe he's good enough to go up another rank. And I was just fortunate. I had a lot of good opportunities and a lot of good mentors, that I respected and appreciated. And certainly a lot of good folks that either worked with me or worked for me or I worked for. So I was very blessed in a lot of ways in that regard.
Do you want to share maybe one of the most dangerous situations you were ever in, if you don't mind? I know you probably had a bunch of them, but can you share something interesting for the listeners?
Well, after Desert Storm in 1991, I was selected to go over and I was the group commander, they call it, and for all fighter operations in really the Middle East, but it's mostly Saudi Arabia. So all the fighters we had there. So I did that for about almost 6 months, and then had a staff job, and then I came back to be the wing commander at Incirlik Air Base in Turkey, where now I flew in Iraq from the north instead of from the south. And I did that for 2 years. And, they shot at us, we shot at them. It was times when, it was a little hectic, and other times it was pretty boring, So it wasn't all like in 2.5 years you were constantly in a combat situation, not like World War II. It wasn't anything like that. But pretty sketchy at the beginning, and it kind of died off, then it picked up again, died off, picked up again. So it was kind of back and forth until obviously we went back into Iraq in 2003.
Once you reached the level you did it get more political? Did you have visits to DC? Did you have to deal with politicians more? Did you ever have to deal with stuff like that, or not really?
Well, I had 4 tours in the Pentagon. That might be 4 tours too many. But no, it was good. I enjoyed quite a bit of it, but I did have a unique experience. I was Secretary of Defense Cheney's military assistant for 2 years. Right. And that was an interesting time because it was not only during Desert Storm when it kicked off, but also, the failed, when the Soviet Union imploded, basically after the wall came down in 89, really the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991. I was there from 90 to 92. And, obviously you see a lot of politics at that level.
Yeah, I bet, right?
And, but, Dick Cheney did a good job, for someone who'd never been in the military before, and he had the respect of the people, especially after Desert Storm. And I've, had the privilege of seeing him a few times after that over the years. And, he really enjoyed his time being Secretary of Defense. And, he did a good job. And it was also the failed coup in the Soviet Union. I don't know if you remember that, when Gorbachev was under house arrest, and
Yeah.
we didn't know what was going to happen then. And there was the riots in California, race riots. So it was an interesting time. I call it a window in history. It wasn't like I was a big player, but I was by his side most of the time, and you get to see some things that most people don't get to see at that level, unless you're certainly a secretary of one of the major, parts of our government. But yeah, it was a great education.
How many presidents have you met?
5.
Okay. Who is the most fascinating?
Well,
I guess interesting or fascinating, whatever word you want to use.
I would probably say I got to see President Bush Sr., a number of times. Certainly when he was president, I was working for Secretary Cheney.
Yeah.
But I also got to see him a couple of times after that, after he was president. And there were some opportunities. I always thought that all of them, he had the most experience. He'd been ambassador, he'd been, in charge of departments, he'd been, so, of course, vice president. So but he was a generally nice, honorable, intelligent, and an individual who had values, and I respected that.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very good.
Especially in light of what's going on today.
I'm sure you met a few assholes along the way.
Met a few.
You can go ahead and list them for us. No, I'm just joking. But like you said, you have a lot of good mentors too, which is such a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I credit my own career, which is not nearly as big as yours, but yeah, if you have good leaders and mentors in your life, it really makes a difference. Surround yourself.
It does make a difference
with good advisors. What are your thoughts about what's going on right now with Russia, China relations? I mean, just what is your general, no pun intended, what's your observation about what's going on right now? Are you nervous? Are you worried about where we're at right now as a country with relations to overseas? Are you nervous at all?
Well, I don't think you can't not be nervous, with what's going on. But, I have a great concern about democracy. And it's not just in our own country, but it's also in other countries.
Yes.
You see some of these people who have risen to power in a democratic forum and then kind of clamp down on democracy and become more of an autocracy. You see it in Poland, and you see it in Hungary, you see it I spent 2 years in Turkey, and I got to know the people real well there. And that's what's happened there in Egypt. To a large extent, never mind China and Russia. So we're starting to see remnants of a pushback on democracy in a lot of different places around the world. And I think that's very promising. And I think some of it's been forced by Putin, in regards to what's gone on in Ukraine. NATO was flailing in a lot of ways before, he invaded in Ukraine. And now NATO is what I remembered it to be during the Cold War. It's more organized, more committed, more, prepared, more funded. So there are pluses and minuses in any part of history, when you see things that go on. But yeah, I mean, what's going on in Putin is at probably his weakest point in his 20 plus years of being in charge, and the country's a mess. He's given up. We're not buying oil from him anymore. That's where he got a lot of his money from, and that's going away, certainly from the standpoint of all the sanctions that have been put against the country. I really feel for the people in Russia because, they're getting denied so many different levels. And then China, is one thing I do know about China, because I've been there, but is that they take the long view. A lot of times we are very short-sighted, 1 year, 2 year, maybe 5 years, maybe even 10. They have visions out to 50 and 100 years. and that puts him at a strong advantage in a lot of cases, especially when you got an autocracy that they have right now. But they're showing some real kinks in the armor in a lot of different ways. Their people are aging, their economy is not growing as fast as they were before, but they've got a large military. Navy's bigger than ours right now, as a case in point. And it's one of those things where Taiwan is a big hot topic because we saw what they did in Hong Kong. After they said they would keep it as kind of a semi-democracy, and of course that's not the case anymore. And then of course, but he's looking at what Putin did in Ukraine and what a backlash it was for the world. And I'm hopeful that that thing does not turn into a major conflict, because if that happens with two major, most powerful countries in the world, the United States and China, we're all going to get hurt.
Agreed. Yeah, and you're much more of an expert on the topic than I am, but I look at it and think to myself, well, if they want to do anything with Taiwan, like what can we really do? I mean, can we really stop them? I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, it would be tough. I mean, just look at what Ukraine did. They surprised the world on how they were able to push back, and now with this failed coup and whatever that was.
Yeah, whatever that was. By the way, for the listeners, we're recording this on the 28th of June, 2023, and there was recently I guess it was a failed coup of Putin. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, it also speaks, to maybe China. China didn't do, probably as well as they could during COVID, and how they clamped down on their people. And, that's a memory that will be hard to erase among the populace there. And if they do something like that again, you can see where it backfires, like it's doing on Putin right now. Mm-hmm. He's got an internal conflict, and never mind an external one.
You've met a lot of smart people, a lot of great leaders, a lot of politicians. And by the way, any of these questions I ask you that you're not comfortable letting out on the live show, we can always edit them out if you select to. So sure. We'll make sure we get your approval before we launch anything. What do you make of the leadership right now in the U.S. and any potential leaders coming up? Like, do you look at all the leaders we have right now, or the potential leaders we could have, and think and scratch your head and go, gosh, can't we do better than that? Or I'm just curious what your thoughts are. You've been around so many talented, smart people in your life. When you look at the situation now, what do you say to yourself?
Well, I think we need to get back to some of the basics on honor and integrity and truth. And, this business about, I mean, I'm frank about it with my friends. I'll be frank on your show. I think Trump was a total disaster. I mean, he's got no values, no honor, no integrity. It's all about himself. And what I saw, where, he's smarter than any general. He's smarter than any businessman. He's smarter than anybody else in the room. And he never took advice very well from very talented people that I knew and respected. So we got to get back to the basics of honor and integrity and values when we select our leaders. And that's something that just has got to get back again.
Mm-hmm. You see any good potential leaders coming up? Anybody you like?
Well, that one I won't speculate on right now, because I'm still trying to figure it out myself. Who is out there that we really feel good about. And
did you happen to
put a plug in for No Labels? You may or may not know about that. This is a organization that's committed to having, compromise and working. There's, I believe, 32 congressmen in the legislature right now, but one's a Democrat, one's a Republican, and in order to be part of the effort there, you have to be able to compromise. And
love it.
So we'll have to wait and see. There was some politicians that take that on really well.
How did we get so divisive? Has social media caused the entire planet to how did we get here, John? I don't remember it. I mean, I remember I graduated college in the 80s, and of course there were always sides and political parties, right? But I don't remember it being so hateful and divisive. Or maybe have I just forgotten?
Well, again, I'll show my naivete. When we had the internet that came on, I was very excited about it because, this is at the very beginning. I mean, of course, you don't know what's going to happen, but I figured that everybody had access to the internet, it would be hard for anybody to lie or to hold the truth back, or, because it would be out there. Uh, when we were sending it during the Cold War, Behind the Iron Curtain, and Radio Free Europe and things like that, trying to get the information out to them. I said, well, the internet's going to take care of that for us, and we won't be able to worry about that anymore. Whoa, boy, was I wrong. And how fake news can go on, and people can just continue to lie, and then and lie and lie and lie, and they say it enough that it must be truthful to some people, and it just goes on and on. Where again, I go back to the answer: we got to honor and integrity and values got to come back into the spectrum, and those are the folks we need to listen to. I may not always agree with them, and I've been a Republican, but I am not very proud of our Republican Party now. It's just to say, but we have to have two parties, or maybe there's no labels is an answer to put another ticket up. Democrat, maybe a Democrat vice president, maybe a Republican president, or a Republican Democrat, or
there's an idea. There's an idea.
So it could be one of those things where American people have got to have better choices sometimes than certainly what we've had in the past.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. By the way, I listened to that Bobby Kennedy interview on Joe Rogan recently, and he sounded a little bit like he was in the middle, really, kind of. I mean, I know he's a Democrat officially, but I was like, okay, well, he's not quite as hardcore on either side. So to your point, yeah, that's an idea. How about a Republican president or Democrat or vice versa, right? Like both.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be? Yeah, well, there's an idea. Switching gears a little bit, kind of touches on the social media. By the way, I personally believe social media has overall been a negative effect on society. I think there's good things about it. I'm not saying it's all bad, but like as a whole, I don't know. I look at what social media does to some younger people and how it makes people feel bad about themselves because they're not as good as the girl they see in the video and they don't have the perfect life. I just have a general sense that it's not a positive thing overall. For a bunch of reasons. We could do a whole podcast on. We could do a whole episode on that topic. What was my point? Oh, where I was going to go was, how do you feel about the tech AI situation, especially being a former commander and a major general in the Air Force? Does the advancement of AI right now worry you? And would you be one of those guys that, apparently there was this group of people that signed this letter saying we should slow down. Do you think the same? How are you feeling?
Well, it's worrisome because we're really not sure what the full impact is going to be. But, it's one of those things where I think it's got ahead of our ability to have it under rules and regulations of some sort. If artificial intelligence ever gets to the point of self-actualization, then we've got a problem. Okay.
Agreed.
And, there are some very knowledgeable people on the subject more than I am about it. And they have signed letters and they've put a kind of caution card out there and said, we need to watch this, because if it gets out of hand, it can do a lot of damage, and even today it could do. I mean, now you're seeing videos of people that look like some individual and they can say whatever, the person who sets it up wants them to say. And you say, is that true? Is that a real thing? And of course, it's confusing for young people because, if they don't know what to trust and be able to be identify with, then they've got challenges with that. So, yeah, I think, so far as the military is concerned, one of the worries that I have is that, we have to date been very cautious about autonomous targeting. What I mean by that is you can send a, robot out or, a drone, and it can just sweep, and if it finds a target, it'll kill it,
Okay.
That's autonomy. We hold control right now with a human being with a button before we end up employing right now. But if it ever gets to the point where we have autonomous warfare, guess what can happen? It make it easier for people to make decisions to go to war because it's a bunch of robots and technology and who knows where that can lead. So there is a military concern, I know, in a lot of us who have served in the service, that this could go too far on an extreme. But we always have to maintain the man in the loop, who's got the finger on the button. And that may not be the case 20, 30, 50 years from now.
I'm sure you know the famous speech from Truman, right, about the military-industrial complex, right? And man, boy, how many times have I heard that replayed in the last couple of years? I mean, boy, he was,
That was Eisenhower, actually.
I'm sorry, Eisenhower. I'm sorry, Eisenhower. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, but yeah, I'm like you. The way I say it, I don't use quite the articulate language you're using, but what I tell my sons is, I say, look, the very first time a robot can make a robot without human assistance, then I'm worried.
Well, right now, I mean, they will have more information than any of our brains could ever possess at any given time. And if they continually learn, as you see with ChatGPT and a few other things that are going on right now, yeah, it's a concern. So we have to be smart about it. We have to think ahead, and we got to be able to maintain control. So.
Yeah, the first time I used ChatGPT, I won't forget it, which was not long ago, right? We're talking just in the last year this has happened. The very first time I used it, I was down in my office basement, and I played around on it for about 10 minutes, and I went upstairs, and I told my wife, I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, this is this is making me nervous.
Well, see what happens. I mean, never mind the kids you can write a dissertation on ChatGPT, and how does a professor? My daughter is a tenured professor, and she's already seen the challenges of students who are getting on, and but it's one of those things. A car is an extension of your legs. A calculator is an extension of your brain. I mean, computers are. So we have all these things that mask our ability as humans, but the brain that's a different subject.
Totally. Yeah. I don't know what it's going to mean for my granddaughters, but yeah, I'm nervous about it for them. I'm 56, and so I figure, I'm going to be dead before it gets too scary, but I would do worry about the world for my grandchildren a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely is something we have to think about.
Yes. So, I appreciate you. You're just so experienced. I wanted to ask you about, some of the tech and some of the foreign policy things. I appreciate your insight on it. Thank you. So, you married, had kids, grandchildren? Give me the scoop. I meant to ask you in the beginning. What's the status there?
Well, as with 7 grandchildren, I'm divorced and married again. So we have 3 on my wife's side and 4 on my side. And we got 4 boys and 3 girls. And youngest is just turning 4, and the eldest is just turned 16. So
awesome.
Keep us busy.
Okay, very good. And what happened? You retired, and you're like, you took a year off, took a few months off, and you're like, I'm bored. And your wife said, hey, you need to go do something. And then the Wings Over the Rockies called you. What happened?
Well, actually, there's a couple of chapters in front of that. I worked for a company called SAP for about almost 3 years, and was a vice president for the company, and really learned a lot. It was a great company, and it was software, kind of deal.
Yeah. But was that weird? By the way, I want to ask you, I don't mean to cut you off right there, but that had to be, that first transition from the Air Force to SAP, that had to be odd for you.
Well, it also was the public sector, going from the public sector to the private sector, and working for a company that was, trying to make money. So, that was different. I learned a lot, though, because I was always on the other side where we were hiring vendors, in the Pentagon and then military and things like that. So I learned a lot, and I was grateful for that. But then I was superintendent of Aurora Public Schools for 7 years. So I was I say it was like being a wing commander again, except the only airplane I had was mine. But we had 42,000 kids, and we had 60 schools, and high poverty in Aurora. Almost 82% was what we call free and reduced lunch, and we had 120 languages representing 130 countries in the school district.
How about that?
Very diverse, and we had a great team, and I was most proud of a lot of things, but one, I'll give credit to my team, and we came up with concurrent enrollment. That's where you can start taking college courses while you're in high school, in the high school building.
All right.
We were the first one to do that pretty much in the nation.
I didn't
And
know
it
that.
was statewide with the governor in Colorado, and now it's nationally. So
How
you can
about
actually
that?
get college credit in high school while you're in high school,
Very
in
good.
the high school building.
Were you had to be, well, you seem like a very, your demeanor is not quite as rigid as I would have thought as a general. I thought you would be a little more, maybe you've softened up. You've probably softened up a little bit.
I
Uh,
don't know. I think I've always been this way.
the teachers, they probably had to be like, holy crap, here comes the general. I mean,
Well, but it was kind of funny because when I got there, they didn't know what to call me. I said, "Well, should we call you general? Should we call you, superintendent? Should we?" I said, "Okay, listen. Here's the deal. If you call me superintendent, I make you do push-ups. If you call me superintendent, I'll give you homework. If you call me John, I'll leave you alone." So worked out.
there you go. Okay, very good. Did you like it though? I mean, it sounds like you had some major accomplishments, but was the parents and the politics? Were you like uh, you know?
Well, it's the way I explain to people is, if you're in a hierarchical organization like your military, the guy who or gal who's had your job, that's your boss, probably had your job. Here we had, of course, you had unions, you had teachers, you had parents, you had, of course, the most important is the kids. Then you had business and you had the politicians. So it is a bit of a, balancing act to keep all that in line. But I had a really good team. And, we were able to kind of go through the financial crisis in 2008,
Mm.
come out strong. And our ability to put together what, I would describe to you as pathways where we get kids a choice, even as early as elementary, pretty basic, middle school, more focused, but clearly targeted in high school. What I mean by that was choice of health sciences, business, arts and communication, STEM. So you and I went to school, we all had the same thing, and then elementary, middle, high school, and you had no choices. We started giving kids the choices. And what we really discovered was when you give a kid a choice, choice is ownership, ownership is motivation, motivation, success.
Mm.
When they can see what they're interested in as opposed to here's what you have to have until you get through high school. And then maybe if you go to college, you can declare a major and find out what you really want to do. Kids today want to do it a lot earlier than wait until they're, in their late teens and going to college or whatever. So that was a powerful insight for me to be able to work through that. And we had a team that gave that. And I carried that over into Wings Over the Rockies because I was head of Boys and Girls Club here in Denver Metro for 3 years before I became CEO for the last 7 here at the museum. But that ability to have choice for young people is a very powerful motivator.
Mm. One question on the kids and speaking of choice and all of that and the kids in the school system before we get to the Wings Over the Rockies. You didn't have to deal with this whole thing that's going on back because you left the school system in 2013, right?
Right.
You didn't have to deal with this whole thing now about the girls and the boys and the transgenders and can this boy play sports on the girls team and this whole thing that all these superintendents now are having to try to figure out how to manage. You didn't have to face any of that. Do you have buddies calling you being like, John, what the hell do I do about this? What advice are you giving them?
Well, we did have issues in that time. It wasn't
you
as
did? Okay.
prolific as it is now, and it wasn't as, popular, from the standpoint of having a lot of people more aware about it. But it was a challenge, but my basic advice and focus had always been on the kids. A lot of times when adult issues get in the way of children in their learning, it's problematic, okay? And if you could just keep that litmus test in most cases, what's good for the kid, what is best for that child insofar as their learning is concerned, you usually, I won't say always, but you usually come out with the right decision. Mm. It's when you start getting into the adult issues, getting in the way of the children learning, that's when it gets problematic. And not always those answers are, you can't make a carte blanche. This is what you have to do for everybody. It just doesn't work that way. Complex systems fail in complex ways, requiring complex solutions. There's no silver bullet in any indication. So you have to take it on kind of a case-by-case basis. But I found that, always going back to what's right for the child usually will end up resulting in a good decision.
I like that. I like that perspective. Very good. So then what happens? You retire from the school system. You did the Boys and Girls Club. Did Wings Over the Rockies, did they tap you? Did they call you? Did you have a friend? Yeah, I mean, you obviously knew a bunch of people there and things. How did it come about? And then let's do an overview. But first, how did it come about for you?
Well, I was on the board for 7 years. I was chair for 2, and then I've been the CEO for 7. So I actually was on the board while I was superintendent of schools.
I see.
And later on at the Boys and Girls Club and so forth. So
Okay.
I've been part of the organization for quite a while.
I see.
But in 2017, they asked me to be the CEO, and I'd just been finishing up because I'd been asked to be part of the Boys and Girls Club as kind of a transition because my predecessor had been there 20 years and they really didn't find the person that they wanted to hire. So I mentored a young lady who's doing a great job there now. And it just happened to be just perfect timing when they had an opening at Wings Over the Rockies and they asked me to join, and I said I'd be honored.
Yeah, but aren't you ready to play golf and chill out? Is this a full-time job? Is it a full-time gig or no? I don't even.
Yeah, full-time
okay.
job.
Okay. Well, aren't you ready to relax?
Well, I get to walk into a 1941 hangar building every day, for the most part. I get to fly 5 airplanes that we have because we give kids opportunities to fly for free. We give away $250,000 every year of flight training scholarships at $12,000 increments. Again, we have pathways, as I mentioned, not health sciences, business, arts, and communications, STEM. We have 4 pathways within STEM: how to be a pilot, how to be an aircraft mechanic, how to be a aircraft maintenance officer, and then we're building one for air traffic control. And we even fly teachers for free, and they become our mentors. And what better way to reach kids on the art of the possible than having a teacher become part of your kind of makeup and being able to get the word out. So as long as you enjoy what you're doing, I feel like I'm doing fine.
Yeah, I was just about to say it fits you so perfectly. I mean, obviously, the flight, the planes, the Air Force, the kids, and your passion for children, it just all goes together. I mean, you're absolutely perfect for it. For the folks that don't know about Wings Over the Rockies, would you mind giving a quick overview?
Yeah, so Wings Over the Rockies' mission is to educate, inspire, and excite people of all ages about aviation and space, not just aviation, both past, present, and future. So we have one organization now with 2 locations. The organization that everybody knows about is up at Lowry Air Force Base, the old location. When we closed that in 1994, the museum was formed. And then after that, in 2018, we opened a second site at Centennial Airport where we have 15 acres on an airport. But we have airplanes that fly there. We have simulators and drones. And we have a school we built there. It's a middle school, Colorado Skies Academy. It's project-based learning. It's a unique way to learn for kids that I really saw when I was superintendent, but I really wanted to put in this school. So anybody who's interested, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, this is a great charter school, public school that is allowing them, and we're recruiting kids right now to do that. And then we're also looking to build a food hall on the campus because there's no better way to attract people to see your, facility than have food, and we can call it food entertainment because it's going to be more than just going to a great place. We're working on that right now. We haven't quite built it or got full permission yet, but we're still working that. And eventually we want to build a black sky gallery. The big hangar where we have the airplanes is called the Blue Sky Gallery. Why? Aviation, blue, that kind of sky. Black sky is for space.
Okay, got it.
We have this thing that's already planned. It's called Traveling Through the Cosmos. It's going to make Disney cry if we could ever get it built.
All right.
And so we're in that process. So this is a very unique campus at Centennial Airport. One organization, 2 locations.
Very good. It's wingsmuseum.org is the best website to go to learn just about everything you want to know, or any other websites?
Yeah, Wings Over the Rockies. And when we say Wings Over the Rockies Air and Space Museum, that's at Lowry campus. Wings Over the Rockies Exploration of Flight is the campus at Centennial.
Yeah, got it. Okay, very, very good. I want to ask about, as we get towards the back end of this, can I ask about space a little bit? I'm fascinated with the topic. I'm not an expert on it. Couple of questions for you. should we be investing more time and money on space travel? Should we be more aggressive than we're being? Or do you think it's about right? That's question number one. And then can you roll that into, is there life on other planets, John? Yeah, what's your opinion?
Well, should we be going into space? The answer is yes. I mean, it's just human nature to explore. We've done that from the beginnings of time, and that's not something that we can erase from our DNA. So this is like 1969 to 72. I was at the Air Force Academy for 69 to 73, so I was there when all the missions to the moon were flown for Apollo. And then now, it's not just the Soviet Union and the United States. It's the United States and, right now it's 24 countries that have got more than satellites, and I think 7 of them have launched satellites from their own country proper. But then you got the private sector, that is involved now.
Yes.
So it's a much different mix of energy and money and talent and ability to go into space. So yeah, I'm excited about Artemis. Artemis 1 was flown with the Orion and Lockheed Martin, and they flew around the moon without any astronauts on. Artemis 2 hopefully will be launched next year or shortly after. And that'll be this time flying around the moon with astronauts on board, male and female. And then Artemis 3 is when we land on the moon again, and hopefully that's before 2030. And then Artemis 4, I'm really excited about because we're actually going to put a space station around the moon instead of around the Earth.
Oh, I didn't know that.
We're going to start building a permanent habitat on the moon.
I did not know that. Okay. Wow. That's the plan. Okay. All right. All being led by NASA?
Well, NASA's a big part of it, of course. A lot of private sector. We see what's going on there. Lockheed Martin and SpaceX and different kinds of.
Who's in charge? Yeah, but who's in charge? I interrupted you. Sorry there. But who's captain?
Well, it's being driven by and with the guidance of NASA, but it is a lot more private sector than it was when I was a White House fellow, 85, 86, when we lost the teacher in space, with Challenger, and even more so when I was investigating NASA back in 2003 after Columbia failed and we lost the crew on the reentry. Mm-hmm. So that I think is exciting that we have all these different facets, different countries, private and public, money's going into it. And we need to be a interstellar race that goes to other places in the universe. So this is an exciting time to be alive. And I tell young people right now, the person who is going to walk on Mars is alive today and probably a teenager.
That is a great point. Never thought of it that way. You're right. What's the timeline to get to Mars right now? 6 years, 5 years?
Well, to get to the moon, it's about 6 years. To get to Mars, and people say 2035. I'm not that optimistic, but somewhere in the 2030s.
And what about the timeline from the time the rocket takes off from the Earth to Mars? How long does the person have to be gone?
Well, that's this is what I always tell kids. It's kind of funny because they say, how long is it going to take you to go from, let's say, the plan right now for the most part is to go to the moon and launch off the moon to go to Mars. So let's say 6 months.
Okay.
Then we're going to be on Mars for 6 months.
All right.
And then I ask the kids, well, how long is it going to take to get back? And they say, well, 6 months. No, it's going to take a year to get back because of orbital mechanics. So we'll launch when we're close to Mars, but unless you want to stay there for another year and a half, you won't get back to that point again. So you're going to be launching with greater distance. And the other one that I get a kick out of telling them, I said, if you got 2 twins, and they're both born within minutes of each other, one goes to Mars and one comes back. One's older and one's younger. And they go, what? How's that possible? Well, that's the Einstein's theory of relativity. And that I challenge them to find out, to do the research when they get older, to figure that out for themselves, because we haven't figured it out completely either.
How about that? That's it. And what about the life on other planets?
Life on other planets. Well, if you just do the sheer odds,
right?
There are more suns than there are grains of sand on this planet by orders of magnitude. Okay? So just by sheer numbers, there's got to be life on other planets. Now, whether it's an amoeba, a little protein, or if it's actually somebody's walking around on 2 legs, I have no idea. But the odds are that it is definitely life beyond Earth.
How about this? If we I think about, I don't know why I think about this. If we actually did discover another being, let's say life landed here from another planet, would that help unite countries on planet Earth that are fighting and hate each other right now, and we would bond as human beings? Or would we be even more split and be trying to like, okay, well, we're going to make friends with the aliens before you do? And how would that go? What do you think would happen?
Well, you're the enemy of my enemy is my friend, So, if you have a common threat, it does bring people. Just look what happened in NATO. I mean, with Ukraine and Russia. I mean, NATO was fledgling. It was kind of weakened, and it was trying to figure out its purpose. And now there's that threat of what Russia's doing and what could have been done had we not stepped in. And we'll see what Ukraine does in the long run. But it does unite people with a common threat. So my short answer was, if you look at all these science fiction movies, that's what always happens.
Yeah, I tend to agree. So that's my opinion. I'm always telling people. I always say, look, if aliens land, all this fighting we're doing about this country or this politician or this sexual orientation or this religion, a lot of that's going to be wiped away because we're just going to be concerned about we're humans and they're not, and let's try to team up here. I think I could be wrong.
We may. I don't know if you and I will get to see that, but we may.
I know.
There's UFOs out there we don't explain, so who knows?
Yeah. By the way, okay, I wasn't going to ask you that because we're almost out of time. What is this? What is this noise that I'm? All of a sudden, UFOs are that topic is popular again, and what's going on with that, John? What?
This has been going on since I'd say late 40s, early 50s. I mean, there's a contingent of people that are absolutely convinced that UFOs and people from other planets have come down here. And who knows? I can't say they're wrong. I can't say they're right. But there is a lot of unexplained anomalies that even the Pentagon is looking into, and particularly Navy fighter pilots have identified things that they've seen on radar or even visually, and they just can't explain it on how it's moved. We know how airplanes move, and we know how fast they are, and we see particularly when you're going, Mach 2 and Mach 2, and we know how that looks like. But to see something that has moved differently, it's a good question.
Yeah, for sure. It seems to be hotter in the news lately. I don't know why it is. My conspiracy theory mind pops up and goes, well, they're just trying to get us used to it because they actually know that they're out there and they don't want us to be too shocked. But I'm just being silly. I hope I'm alive to see it. Yeah, I'm like you though. On a serious note, I'd like to be alive to see that happen, some sort of connection happen, because that would be the biggest moment of history on planet Earth, right? So I'd like to be around to see it if it does happen. But anyway, Well, sir, what a career! I mean, I admire, and you look like you're in great shape too. I don't. How do you stay? You look. I mean, what do you must be on a pretty strict diet and must exercise still pretty regularly.
But my wife always says, like, you use a few more pounds losing, but you got to stay, try to work out and stay in good health. And I'm married to a nurse, so that's a good advantage, I tell you.
You look great. Congratulations on your career. I appreciate you sharing on the Riderflex podcast, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks for the invitation, and thanks for the opportunity to talk about this amazing organization that we're part of at Wings Over the Rockies. And we invite anybody to come out and see what we're doing. Particularly the second site, we're always doing something different on weekends. We fly kids for free. We give free scholarships. We allow them to, fly drones, get their license at 16. You can solo in a glider at 14. You can get your license in a glider at 16. You can solo in a powered airplane at 16, get your license at 17. You can get a license to fly drones and make money at 16 years old flying drones.
There's a good one. There's a good one.
And if you're an aircraft mechanic and even if you don't go to college, by the time you're 24, you're making over $100,000. So there's a lot of opportunities. The problem is young people don't know what they don't know, and we're trying to give them what the art of the possible is. So come by and visit us. We'd love to show everybody. But thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you, sir.